Looking back now, I can hardly believe how my seemingly perfect marriage was built on lies, crumbling away after just months of sacrifice. In that moment, instead of feeling defeated, I discovered an unexpected strength within me. A strength that would change everything. I remember that suffocating summer afternoon in the car, packed to the brim with shopping bags and souvenirs, creating an almost claustrophobic atmosphere that matched the growing tension in my heart. My mother-in-law Mary's seemingly innocent question about the heat carried that familiar undercurrent of control I'd grown to recognize. When I acknowledged how difficult the drive home would be with all the luggage, she exchanged knowing looks with my husband Nicholas. The conversation took a cruel turn when she suggested I should be grateful for the opportunity to walk 5 hours home, claiming it would be good for my health. That was the final straw that broke my carefully maintained composure. With a sudden surge of confidence that surprised even me, I announced I would indeed get out of the car and walk right to my own vacation house that they could see from where we sat. Their mocking laughter only strengthened my resolve, as a clear plan crystallized in my mind. I was finally ready to fight back after everything I'd endured. My name is Savannah Nicholson, and at 27, I had been a housewife for 6 months when my life changed forever. Nicholas and I met at our university hiking club, where our shared love for adventure and outdoor activities sparked what I thought was a perfect romance. We were always planning trips and excursions, filling nearly every weekend with new experiences. Our relationship developed rapidly, fueled by our common interests, and I was initially impressed by how he naturally took the lead in everything at the club. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs in how he controlled every aspect of our relationship from the very beginning. Even the smallest decisions were his to make, not mine. When I would suggest something as simple as Chinese food for dinner, he would immediately override it with his own plans for hiking. He would then instruct me to prepare lunch for 2, as if my time and preferences didn't matter at all. Any attempt to voice concerns about last-minute changes was met with the manipulative question of whether I really wanted to argue with him. His words were always final, and I, never one to force my opinions, learned to accept it. At the time, it seemed easier to just go along with his decisions, though I now realize this only reinforced his controlling behavior. The real shock came when we decided to get married, and he casually announced that I would be quitting my job. When I expressed my love for my work, his response revealed his true character. He dismissed my career as mere distraction, declaring that his career was more important and that I needed to focus on supporting him at home. My own professional aspirations meant nothing compared to his. Despite my reservations about his demands, I eventually gave in. I resigned from my job and became a full-time housewife, though I never fully understood why he insisted on my complete devotion to domestic life. While I believed we could have balanced both careers, the true reason behind his wishes became crystal clear after our marriage. The moment of truth came during our engagement announcement to his family. He introduced me to his mother by proudly declaring that I would be quitting my job to take care of the house. His words hit me like a physical blow, exposing the harsh reality of what I'd agreed to. Though Nicholas had suggested I become a housewife, he humiliated me with his own words about it. I watched in silent horror as he told his mother he hoped he could control me through financial dependence. He even smiled as he belittled me in front of her, saying that despite my limited abilities, he hoped they would accept our marriage. My financial dependence was, to him, proof of his strength as a husband, a twisted badge of honor. On the surface, he presented himself as my protector, but in reality, I was merely a tool to boost his ego. His mother seemed thoroughly pleased with the situation. To her, Nicholas was the strong, reliable man who could control his family, exactly the kind of son she'd raised. Her cruel words still echo in my mind. She wondered aloud why her son couldn't find someone more attractive, describing me as plain, unremarkable, and without special abilities since I didn't work. Like taking care of a child in an adult's body, she'd said, her words cutting deep into my soul. Keeping silent in the face of such provocations was almost impossible, but I knew Nicholas would explode in anger if I dared to object. He loved to flaunt his position as head of the household while simultaneously accusing me of being wasteful with money. Still, out of what I thought was love, I continued to tolerate his arrogant attitude. I believed it was my duty to take care of Nicholas, and the heavier the responsibility became, the more devoted I grew. Over time, even his daily negligence, like leaving clothes strewn about, became normal. Having grown up in his parents' house, he'd never learned basic household skills. He couldn't even cook a meal for himself without my help. Amazingly, Nicholas took pride in this situation, as if it was perfectly natural for me to handle everything. Simply because he earned money outside the home, he believed he was the most important person and I should follow all his decisions. He believed everything should go according to his wishes. Even when things didn't go as expected in traffic, I was the one to be blamed. I can't even tell if we're moving or standing still. Why did you choose such a crowded route? He would complain. I had become so accustomed to apologizing for things that weren't my fault that I automatically responded with, "I'm sorry, I should have checked more carefully." Several months into our marriage, summer arrived with unbearable heat. Nicholas suddenly announced that we would be going to a cool place for vacation. He'd already made the reservations. When I asked about my schedule, he dismissively replied that a housewife like me couldn't have any commitments worth considering. That's how our vacation plans were decided. At the end of the month, I was shocked to see the credit card bill was much higher than usual. When I asked Nicholas if there might be an error, he carelessly explained that the reservation was for 6 people. He had included his parents and sister and her husband in our vacation plans without even consulting me. His justification was that we couldn't just enjoy ourselves alone. We needed to give back to his parents by spending money on family. He even implied I would look terrible if I tried to economize on family expenses, saying this would finally give some value to my typically worthless contributions. While I understood the importance of respecting family, I was deeply angry that he'd made such an important decision without consulting me. He didn't forget to make me feel guilty about it either, asking why I was complaining about just this one thing. He insisted that since I was so bad at making decisions, he had to plan everything. When he demanded to know if I had any problems with his choices, he ruthlessly justified his actions by challenging me to argue against him with evidence. I couldn't avoid him, and I had to use the dowry my parents had given me at our wedding to cover the credit card expenses. My peace of mind vanished completely as Nicholas's control over my life grew stronger with each passing day. He believed he had the right to control everything in my life, my time, my possessions, and even my identity. Though he constantly belittled me, I felt unable to complain or seek help from anyone. The day of our summer resort trip finally arrived, and we set out in a large car packed with 6 adults. This was my 3rd formal meeting with my in-laws, and I noticed something I hadn't before. My mother-in-law attended to every single one of my father-in-law's needs, down to opening water bottles for him. He never showed any gratitude for her constant attention. My sister-in-law Stephanie clearly disapproved of this dynamic, and I couldn't help but notice how different her own husband was, helping with housework and genuinely caring about her happiness. I was amazed that such men actually existed. Meanwhile, I grew increasingly uncomfortable as I realized how my mother-in-law considered this unconditional servitude to her husband completely normal. Sometimes I would lie awake at night, terrified that I was destined for the same future with her conservative mindset. It became clear that she saw me as nothing more than a convenient tool to lighten her own responsibilities and serve the family. One evening during the trip, she suggested a restaurant for dinner. When I politely agreed that it sounded like a good idea, she immediately pounced, telling me I should make the reservations. I was taken aback, but before I could respond, she launched into a lecture about how a new daughter-in-law should naturally take on such tasks without being asked. In that moment, the truth hit me hard. To my mother-in-law, I was merely a means to fulfill her wishes. Taking care of my in-laws had become yet another obligation, making my burden even heavier. Like Nicholas, her quiet pressure was relentless, and questioning any responsibility was simply not allowed. The responsibilities kept piling up, and any support I desperately needed seemed impossibly far away. My only ally in this situation was Stephanie, Nicholas's older sister. She managed her own career with remarkable efficiency, and though this was our first meaningful conversation, I had already noticed her sharp insights during group activities. Her ideas were always logical and well thought out, reflecting her intelligence. Stephanie would intervene whenever her mother tried to force more tasks on me. Having dealt with similar pressure in her own way, she understood how uncomfortable these impositions could be. Meanwhile, Nicholas remained silent about his mother's demands, contentedly enjoying the resort stay as if nothing was wrong. When he remarked about how nice it would be to live in such a place someday, his mother agreed, sighing that it was sadly too expensive, an unattainable dream for them. Throughout the trip, my mother-in-law enthusiastically visited tourist spots and souvenir shops. Nicholas's detailed knowledge of the area proved surprisingly useful. For someone who claimed this was his first visit, he navigated the area with suspicious confidence, leading his parents to all the places he wanted to visit. Everything followed his pre-planned itinerary that none of us had been consulted about. His parents saw him as their precious son and followed his decisions without question. When I curiously asked if he'd been here before, he gave a vague answer about it not being his first time. I pointed out how he seemed unusually familiar with everything, even restaurant hours. He brushed it off, claiming he'd just done some research beforehand. In reality, Nicholas seemed to know the place quite well and had clearly put considerable effort into making the trip comfortable for everyone. As I pondered this, my mother-in-law's voice interrupted my thoughts. Loaded down with shopping bags, she called for my help. When I asked if she'd bought all these items herself, my question hung in the air. She replied with biting criticism, telling me that unlike me, she had many acquaintances and needed souvenirs for all of them. She insisted it was only natural for a daughter-in-law to help with the bags, then questioned my upbringing, suggesting my parents had failed to educate me properly. This wasn't the first time she'd made such hurtful comments, and I could hear the pride in her voice, pride in how well she'd raised Nicholas. Though her attitude cut deep, I swallowed my irritation and silently followed her orders. Stephanie, however, frowned at her mother's words. She immediately jumped to my defense, apologizing to me and offering to help carry the bags herself, comparing it to caring for elderly people. When my mother-in-law bristled at being called elderly, Stephanie stood her ground. She firmly told her mother that if she didn't like hearing the truth, perhaps she should become more independent instead of relying so much on others. The stress of meeting both Nicholas's and his parents' demands was becoming unbearable. Yet somehow, Stephanie's support in the resort's new environment reminded me of what had first attracted me to Nicholas's leadership abilities. When it was time to head home, the car was packed full of souvenirs and other items. My mother-in-law had bought not just gifts, but also daily necessities, claiming everything was cheaper here. The luggage took up every inch of space, making the car even more cramped than during our arrival. I tried to ease the tension by asking if my in-laws felt hot. My father-in-law grumpily complained about how difficult the drive home would be with everything so cramped. Then suddenly, my mother-in-law asked if I understood what they were trying to say. Confused and anxious, I asked what she meant. That's when they suggested I should walk the 5 hours home. I was stunned. Our house was in a location impossible to reach without using the highway. The very idea of walking seemed absurd. While shipping services were common for luggage, they hesitated to spend money on that. They claimed using a delivery service would be wasteful and defeat the purpose of coming by car. Walking, they said, would be free and good for my health. I should be grateful for the opportunity. These words, though seemingly casual, carried an unbearable weight of pressure. Though I'd been conditioned not to argue, this time I couldn't help but react, earning a frown from my mother-in-law. Nicholas chimed in, asking which was more important, my body or all these memorabilia. He reminded me of my hiking experience, suggesting I should consider this my specialty. That was the final straw. I had endured so much, but there was a line they shouldn't cross. They seemed to think they could say anything to me without consequences. I announced that I would indeed get out of the car and walk, as I could actually see our house from here. Nicholas and his mother burst out laughing. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? His mother asked between laughs. With a calm smile, I revealed my truth. I had my own villa in the nearby resort community. I don't need to return to your house. I'm perfectly content here. My butler would be arriving shortly to pick me up. Nicholas and his mother fell into shocked silence. What I said was absolutely true. My father was wealthy, and our family had always been financially comfortable. My parents had recently purchased a vacation home in this area, planning to retire here eventually. The area was popular among those seeking to escape the big city, and my parents had agreed to let me use the house during off-seasons if I helped manage the property. I hadn't discussed this with Nicholas, but before our departure, I had confided in my parents about the situation. They were shocked, then quickly became angry, promising their full support if I decided to move to the house. Looking directly at Nicholas, I delivered my carefully prepared words. Thank you, Nicholas, for making me stronger. You've given many orders and acted selfishly, but perhaps I was never your ideal wife. Maybe you'll be happier married to someone you truly love. My mother-in-law's face darkened at these words. Someone you truly love? What do you mean by that? I had been quietly investigating Nicholas's behavior for some time. From the beginning of our marriage, I'd suspected he was having an affair. He had started going out frequently, always claiming business trips. However, the real destination of these trips was a woman's house in this area. Nicholas, you said these were business trips, but I grew suspicious of their frequency. When I checked, these trips didn't exist. You were using work as an excuse to visit a woman in this area. I found a recent receipt from a local store in your pocket. Her name is Jessica, and she attended school with us, didn't she? Nicholas was visibly shaken, unable to hide his surprise. He probably thought he had everything under control, but his plan was painfully simple. He might have thought I wouldn't notice, but I was aware of everything. Having managed all the housework, I knew every detail of his habits. You knew about this? How did I not realize you knew? Nicholas asked in disbelief. Stephanie could no longer contain herself. Considering betrayal unforgivable, she harshly rebuked her brother. Nicholas, what's going on? There are no excuses for cheating, she declared, her anger evident. Even his mother, who always defended him, changed her expression, looking at him severely. Nicholas has been meeting this woman during his free time, shopping with her, and spending time in this neighborhood, I continued. Here are the photos as proof. I had used my free time to discreetly follow Nicholas through crowds, thinking if my suspicions were right, he would leave some evidence. When I showed the photos on my phone to his mother, her doubts instantly turned to certainty. Explain what's happening, Stephanie demanded, her voice filled with rage. Finally cornered, Nicholas tried to maintain composure as he admitted the truth. He explained how just before our wedding, he discovered through social media that a former classmate lived in this area. She had moved here for work, and he had always been secretly attracted to her since university. As they reconnected, their relationship grew closer. His next words were unexpected as we anxiously waited. He claimed they weren't yet in a romantic relationship but were at a delicate stage, near that boundary. That's why he had been frequently coming here alone during this crucial period. He had decided in his heart to start a new life with her as his girlfriend. This wasn't just a casual romance, he was seriously pursuing Jessica. That seriousness had made everything more uncomfortable, and he admitted he had been seeing her even before our marriage. Then what was our time together? I asked, stunned by his confession. What was this marriage to Savannah all about? His parents asked in confusion. I made a mistake in judgment. If I had met her first, I would have married her instead. My relationship with Savannah deepened by chance and led to marriage. I consoled myself thinking it was just bad luck, Nicholas replied coldly. This revealed that our marriage had never been what he truly wanted from the beginning. He had been intentionally cruel, hoping I would be the one to initiate divorce. Now it all made sense. Why he had been so selfish throughout our marriage. All his immature behavior had been attempts to pursue his romantic desires without any consideration for my feelings. I couldn't accept such contemptuous treatment. Even if his relationship with Jessica was still superficial, the fact that he had lied and met another woman was undeniable. His selfishness had exceeded all limits. Without hesitation, I handed him the divorce papers I had already prepared. Sign these, Nicholas. You won't regret divorcing me, will you? Yes, this is for the best. Now everything will be clear, and I can freely date Jessica, Nicholas said, hastily signing the papers as if it was all working out in his favor. I felt a secret satisfaction watching this, carefully tucking the papers into my bag. Then I revealed my truth. Actually, Nicholas, I found Jessica's social media posts and contacted her. She was quite surprised to learn we were married. Jessica was, above all, my close friend. I initially searched for her worried about losing my husband, but it turns out she already has another partner and isn't interested in you at all. Nicholas turned pale at this revelation. What? She has another partner? How dare you tell such vicious lies to deceive me, he asked, clearly shaken. No matter how much you accuse me, the facts won't change. Jessica hasn't officially announced her marriage yet, but she shared this information with me. Look, here's the message she sent me. I showed Nicholas my phone screen, where Jessica had clearly written that she viewed him as nothing more than a kind friend. Nicholas read the message in silence, his face showing pure despair. Don't think you can remarry me. I'm not someone who marries just to fill a void. From now on, live freely without depending on anyone, I concluded. Nicholas had found emotional support in Jessica, but now that was crumbling, leaving him in an unstable state. With our bond broken, he had nothing left. This is probably better for Jessica too. After all, taking care of a man who can't even handle the simplest household chores would be quite a burden. I'm sure she's spending time with someone much better than you. While I bear some responsibility for tolerating you for so long, you've failed miserably as a husband, I declared without hesitation. Nicholas mumbled to himself, how did it come to this? These 6 months were completely meaningless. Yes, you were either manipulated by a kind friend or perhaps deliberately deceived yourself, I replied indifferently, closing the conversation. I've paid the price for 6 months of your miserable treatment. It's truly foolish to sacrifice family for such mistakes. Nicholas silently grabbed my arm, pleading not to be abandoned, but before I could react, Stephanie spoke up against his behavior. Stop depending on others. Your and Mom's attitude during this entire trip has been irritating me. Acting like Savannah should naturally do everything. Nobody acts like that anymore. Who do you think you are? Everything you've done will come back to haunt you. The car was in complete chaos. Nicholas's father and brother-in-law silently watched the situation unfold, as usual. Stephanie's words echoed my feelings exactly. Nicholas and his mother's arrogance and selfishness had made daily life unbearable. Seeing your attitude during this trip, I can imagine how difficult it must be to live with you every day. I couldn't stand it for even one day, Stephanie continued. This old-fashioned idea that mothers-in-law are superior is completely meaningless nowadays. Stop this nonsense. Suddenly, Nicholas burst into laughter that echoed throughout the car. Savannah, no matter how strong you act, it's useless. You may not like it, but someone like you without a job can't live alone. He was still lost in his own delusions, believing he could control me. His attitude clearly showed he thought I was still dependent on him. After the divorce, you'll have no choice but to rely on me. I've arranged everything to ensure that. Your job options are limited. Understand that and tear up these divorce papers. Continue your role of taking care of the house. He finally revealed his true intentions. To him, I was nothing more than a servant. Hearing these words, I was struck by anger and disbelief. Looking back, even when we were dating, his kindness had been superficial. In reality, he just wanted someone convenient who would handle everything without him having to do anything. What are you talking about? I asked, maintaining my composure despite my confusion. I earn more than you. He thought I was joking and laughed even harder. So what? What can a housewife who stays at home all day do? Don't insult people who actually work. How can someone who knows nothing about the world earn money? You're the one who doesn't understand reality. You can't even handle simple household chores, yet you waste work time meeting other women, I replied, pulling out my phone to show him the screen. It displayed my banking app, showing a $500 deposit during our 2-day trip, along with notifications of other recent deposits. After you made me quit my job, I started selling handmade items as a hobby, I explained, leaving him completely stunned. It was as if this was the last thing he had expected. This wasn't surprising, as I had never mentioned this activity to him. Right after our marriage, he had found my craft materials scattered around the room and jokingly scolded me, asking what I was doing. I had initially started crafting to supplement our household income, but after his reaction, I avoided mentioning it and kept the income secret. Actually, my recent pieces are selling well at high prices, selling daily. I'm thinking about starting a proper business soon. Honestly, divorcing you will only benefit me. I can focus on my creations and be free from the hassle of taking care of you. Nicholas was visibly shocked, muttering, "Start a business," and freezing, unsure how to react. I understand starting a business requires tremendous effort, I continued, but now I have the confidence to earn my own income and live without depending on you. Finally, reality hit him as he realized his control over me was crumbling. I was freed from his impositions and ready to forge my own path. I'm prepared for this challenge. Unlike you who just spends time at the company, I'm creating my own way forward. Stephanie nodded in support of my statement, while Nicholas dejectedly slumped his shoulders. The time I spent being manipulated by you was all wasted. Live in your own world from now on. Since you're not good at facing reality, I'll leave you alone. Don't interfere with my life anymore, I said firmly. Stephanie backed my words. That's an excellent idea, Savannah. He's always just depended on and used others without doing anything himself. It's time he faces difficulties and rebuilds his own willpower. I couldn't help but smile, indeed. Though he looks like an adult on the outside, he's still a child inside. I'm tired of taking care of a childish adult. Living alone will be good for him. As I'd said earlier, I added, I'm going back to my house that's just a 10-minute walk away, and got out of the car, closing the door. Through the window, I remembered something I'd forgotten to say. Mother, you said you couldn't live here, but I'm sorry. I'll be the one living in this wonderful place. Why don't you try the same thing? From now on, I'll enjoy life freely, surrounded by nature. I waved with a slight smile, while Nicholas and his mother frowned in displeasure. And so I finalized my divorce from Nicholas, using the compensation for my sacrifices in the household to start my new business. After the divorce, Stephanie and I maintained our good friendship, and she told me what happened after I left the car. It was quite a scene after you left. Nicholas was depressed, and Mother was shaken by the news of your new business and house. Those two seem lost. Even if Nicholas dates someone else in the future, with his personality, marriage will be difficult. I could imagine exactly that. Even if Nicholas changed his selfish behavior, his domineering mother would still be there in the background, causing any normal woman to run away. According to Stephanie, Nicholas has completely lost his confidence and now fears even talking to women. He started living alone but is struggling greatly. Even daily tasks are a challenge for him. Because of his selfish behavior, even his father refused to help him. Stephanie laughed, suggesting Nicholas would face a very difficult life from now on. She herself had distanced herself from their mother, which significantly reduced her stress levels. Today, Stephanie visited my new home and praised it. What a lovely and elegant house, Savannah. It's wonderful. I'm doing well, thanks. Thank you for coming, I replied. Stephanie returned a warm smile. It's fine, coming here is a nice change of pace for me too. The climate is pleasant, and I've wanted to become closer to you. It's like having a new sister. Her warmth brought comfort to my heart. After many difficulties, now freed from complicated family bonds, it seemed a special connection had formed between us. We had built a mutually supportive relationship. Stephanie, please accept this, I said, offering her a piece of jewelry I'd made especially for her. Stephanie accepted it and expressed her joy enthusiastically. This is wonderful. Did you make this, Savannah? You really have talent. I want to put it on right away. She immediately put on the jewelry, and seeing her happiness filled me with joy too. That's how we built a relationship that feels like real sisters. Though my marriage to Nicholas failed, meeting an amazing woman like Stephanie made it all feel worthwhile. Now, living in this peaceful place, I'm enjoying life to the fullest with freedom and creativity. What did you think of this story of overcoming adversity and new beginnings? Please leave a comment and share with your friends so more people can discover such heartwarming stories. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss any updates and can follow all our future stories. See you in the next video.